Welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. This is the show, as many of you know, that's about all the stuff going on at the University of Louisville, all the good stuff going on at the University of Louisville, the research, the great students, programming, and all the things that you want to know about at UofL. So what do we got on the show today? Well, where is the most likely place in Louisville to get hit by a car? We'll tell you that. Also, are mopeds safer than motorcycles? We'll tell you that too. We'll have answers to those questions from a couple of UofL researchers coming up. But first, classes have begun, and it's a new academic year at the University of Louisville. 2,800 freshmen have descended upon the campus, taking many of the parking spots, which I use over the summer. Michael Martis is the Vice President for Student Affairs and the Dean of Students at UofL, and he's here, as always, at the start of school to talk about what's new and what's going on at the University of Louisville. Michael, good to see you.
Mark, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me in here. You know, what's new is just having the 2,800 new students and all the students back. So it's exciting. We have classes during the summer, of course, but you don't have the same volume of students. So I think it's exciting for everybody, and everybody gets kind of re-energized when all the students come back on campus.
It's good to see them, except they take all the parking spots, but that's part of the deal. We're here for the students, right?
I think it's good if they're taking your spot.
That's right.
And that's better serving a student. So I think we're okay with that.
That's a good thing. I think we're all right with that. 2,800 in this freshman class. That's a pretty big class, isn't it?
It's a large class. It's larger than last year's class, and that's intentional. We wanted to grow the freshman class a little bit, and we've been recruiting in some areas outside the state that we haven't traditionally recruited in. So that's part of that growth as well.
And the out-of-state numbers are big too.
Yeah, it's our largest out-of-state percentage, having over 20% of our freshman class coming in from out of state. Areas like Chicago, Cincinnati have been big areas that we've seen a lot more students that are coming to the university. That's exciting. So they bring a diversity of perspective coming into the university. It also shows the UofL brand. It's strong nationally. We've gone into those markets and people have been excited about attending the University of Louisville.
Right, and from a financial standpoint too, those out-of-state students pay more in tuition, which is good for the university, right?
That's true. They do pay more, and it's also, when we look at the state numbers for students who come to the Commonwealth and go to school, it's about 60% of them are more likely to stay. 60% are stay. And reside and can live. And so one of those things, we had Mayor Fisher at our kickoff Welcome Week service project, but one of the things is if we're recruiting these students from out of state and they're getting good jobs and experiences, they could be the ones creating the new businesses and doing it here in Louisville, and maybe not in some of these other areas that they're from. So that's positive for not just the university, but for the city and the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I'm working on a program on a committee with GLI where they're out talking about these 10,000 jobs that are wide open in the city of Louisville and trying to recruit folks, professionals from other cities to come here. And they're right on line with what you just said, that if we can get students to come here from Chicago and Philadelphia and Cincinnati and all these other places to fill those, to come to school here, they're going to fill those jobs that we got in Louisville, and they'll be professionals. They'll have a college degree.
Right. So it gives us a better chance to be able to retain them and have them be in Louisville. They'll get a chance to experience Louisville for 4 years. It's a great community environment to live, to learn, to work. So we're excited.
And the ACT scores of these incoming freshmen. Good, bad, and different?
Oh, no, they continue to go up. And so when we see our numbers compared to national averages or to the state averages within Kentucky, we're excited, to see that's 25.6%, this year for the ACT scores. And so we're bringing in a really strong, academically well-prepared class. Many of them have already completed a lot of college credit hours, so they're coming in with those experiences. And it's interesting because I'm seeing more and more this generation of students coming in. They also want to be able to have some flexibility in what they major in, or they may get double majors. So when they come in with that many credit hours already, that gives them more flexibility, saying, okay, I'm going to pick up 2 majors and maybe a minor, and then they can think, well, that gives me some opportunities to do different things as I go on throughout my career.
And one thing I mentioned to some folks the other day that I thought was a really impressive number, we didn't highlight it as much in the news release we put out about the freshman class, but I thought it was a big number, is 16% of the incoming freshmen are first-generation college students. That's 1 out of every 6 students. They're the first in their family to go to college. That's awesome.
It's awesome, and here's education is, the equalizer. It allows for, a mobility and allows us to be able to close, some of the gaps that we see from socioeconomic perspectives. If we can get students that are coming in who've not had their parents or their grandparents who've been able to go to college and be able to come here and attend and successfully graduate. And that's providing great opportunities. We know that people who graduate from college have better health in terms of their longevity. If we look at really just from an earning perspective, it's about $1.2 million more that a college graduate earns. So the ability to impact not only that individual person, but generations, to have a generational impact and maybe change the trajectory of their family is an awesome ability to be able to provide.
That's a big deal for the University of Louisville. That's one of our trademarks, I think, is getting these kids that have never been to, or their parents have never been to college, and here they are showing up on our doorstep. And the part of that is getting them through. And so we have a new Student Success Center.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, that's in our new academic building. So that's a building that we just opened last week, and it was funding that was provided from the state, and we needed more of that classroom space. And so it's exciting. In that building is the Student Success Center, and the Student Success Center is bringing together our tutoring services. It's bringing together advisors that are helping students that are undecided, and they're still exploratory. So they're exploring what they want to do, which could be a good place to be. It's okay to come in with an undecided major and be able to explore that, but we want to help them be intentional about making a decision and being on a pathway to graduation, and also identifying students that aren't, progressing in the way that they should, or that we know would be more likely that they would actually graduate. So the Student Success Center is helping and going out and connecting and contact with these students and saying, okay, we've seen that you're struggling in this area. Let's get you into supplemental tutoring, or how can we assist you? And so that is going to be positive, that the students know, hey, there is somebody who's actually looking at this, even maybe sometimes before the student realizes, oh, maybe I'm in trouble. Maybe I'm not going to be on a path to be successful, because we can use data to kind of inform when we see these trigger points.
And that's a point of emphasis now for the University of Louisville, an increasing awareness of these students that are perhaps struggling or at the tipping point of perhaps dropping out, and trying to grab them before they do, isn't it? And that we're pouring some money into it too, I think.
Well, absolutely, and we have data that we're being able to pull out and look where are the problem areas that students, typically, if we could see that this student doesn't pass this class or doesn't do well in this area, that's them more likely that they won't continue on and graduate. And faculty are going to be able to flag or identify if a student isn't performing well in a class. And then again, Student Success Center or advisors, people will be able to follow up with that student and try and intervene early, an earlier intervention for them, other than them getting all the way to the end of the semester or the end of their first year and not being really on a pathway to graduate.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this brand new academic building, where the floor on the steps in the entryway is from Crawford Gym.
It's wonderful.
Is that cool?
Yes, I was a student here. I played in Crawford Gym. Crawford Gym, we used to cram so much into Crawford Gym. You had the PE classes, you had the education classes, you had the athletic teams, the national championship teams had practiced there, the women's teams, and then late at night you'd have the intramural sports. So that building was so used by so many Cardinals in the past. So it is really neat to walk into that new state-of-the-art academic building and to know that wood that's on those front steps and in some of those places where students congregate and sit comes from Crawford Gym, because it's sitting on that same site.
Yeah, and Brad Newp went over there the other day and shot some video just in the lobby area there, and there were kids just hanging out, sitting on the steps on the wood from Crawford Gym.
Yep, it's a great space, because you have the main steps, people coming down, but there's these areas that are designed for them to sit, and they're doing that and relaxing in that space.
See, they could be sitting on a board that Daryl Griffith played on.
That's right, probably. He probably dribbled on every inch of that on that wood in his practicing, getting better. So.
But the other thing that's cool about that building, when you walk into what are deemed classroom spaces, they don't look like classrooms. It's a new way of teaching, isn't it?
It's really exciting, and it was designed to be innovative with how our students learn now, and to be able to work in groups, and for students to use their technology. So I was over there on the first day looking at the classrooms, and they're in pods, and the students are sitting at a table with 5, 6 people at a table, and they can work in that group and look on the screen and work on a project on the screen. And a student could take something from one of their electronic devices and then put that on their screen, and they could work on it in a group. And then if they wanted to take that to the larger class, so then there's other pods in the room that are doing. So it's a really interactive. It's not a come in, sit down, somebody lecture at you, and then you leave. It's this place where you can really work on your project, learn, have some critical thinking, work with your group, but then have the instructor there to be able to say, okay, well, we got a problem in this group, or this is where we are, and this is what we came up with, and share that with the larger group, and then allow that to have conversation with everybody. So it's exciting. What's neat about it is you would think, the students are really excited, but I talked to some faculty, and they're excited, and they're posting on their social media. I'm teaching in the new academic building, and they're excited about it as well. So.
Yeah, it's a big deal for the University of Louisville. Not just that, but the expansion of the SAC, the Student Activity Center,
Yes.
is going to be a boon for students as well. Plus, you got the expansion of the football stadium.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different experience for the student who walks on campus at the University of Louisville these days, as opposed to when you were in school, isn't it?
Yeah, back in the Stone Age,
back in
right?
the Neanderthal age, yes.
We have those conversations with alumni all the time who knew U of L, 30 years ago, and to be able to see the transformation, even in the last 15 years, where we really are much more of a residential campus. 73% of our freshmen live on campus. And so that wouldn't have been possible. When I was a freshman, I actually tried to get housing on campus, and there wasn't housing, to be had. I came in, and so you had to find other housing options. So now we have enough space for all of our freshmen to live on if they choose to, and a number of them live at home that are here local and live still at home, and so that's a good option and works for them. But what it's caused is so many more students in this community. So we're here in Cardinaltown, and you have the retail component, so that's good. But we have all this residential area around us, and what happens is the students are now here on campus, and so over the last 10 years, we've gone from, a couple hundred student organizations to over 250,
right.
Over 450. And so those students are associating, and they're wanting to spend time on campus, have events on campus, and that creates really more this vibrant campus life that we want. And those students that are engaged, more likely to retain, more likely to have a higher GPA, and they're developing those soft skills to lead and go out into the workforce and be successful leaders, which is what we're really preparing them for.
And you talked about those 450 plus student organizations. A couple of them put together the Soul event a couple of weekends ago, where the kids went out and they did community service work all over at 40 different locations across the city of Louisville, which is a big deal.
It's a big deal, and that's one of the benefits of Louisville. We benefit of being in a metropolitan area for our students in terms of their ability to be able to experience diverse experiences and to have entertainment and to have the quality of life of being in a metropolitan area. But they get the internships, the co-ops, and the job opportunities working. We have our job fair today, where there's over 60 employers who are looking to hire students on campus and off campus, so they benefit from that opportunity. But we really want them to engage in the community and understand the value of being able to give back. And so many of them have so much in terms of their talent, their resources, how they can contribute, and letting them understand the value of being able to give back to our community. And we're a Carnegie designated engaged community, and that's an important value, and that's why we have that as part of our welcome week. We really want to have students know that we want you to be able to learn and have a great experience here, but we also want you to learn, the value of being able to give back to your community.
A couple things before we wrap up here. Number one would be last academic year, I guess, was a big year in terms of the number of students we turned out that got degrees. Was it our largest ever?
Largest ever in terms of, for that academic year, in terms of the degrees that we awarded, this past year. It also was the highest graduation rates that we've ever experienced. So the university's really continuing this upward trajectory that we've been on of graduating more students, having more people that are graduating from the university with degrees. We have 140,000 U of L alumni, and 80,000 of them live here in this, Metro Louisville area. So,
right. So tell them to get back involved, right?
Yep. Well, and many of them are,
and
we want them to continue. That actually is something that we're working on for this upcoming year, and we'll kick off later this year, the beginning of 2019, which is a mentor program or a networking program for our alums. Mm-hmm. And so we want our students to be able to have that opportunity to connect with somebody who's a professional in their area of interest and be able to see, is this what I want to do, and try to be able to navigate that. So, we're working with the Alumni Association to be able to launch that in this upcoming year, and we're excited about the benefits for that for our students, but also for our alumni to be able to connect and give back to a student.
Pay attention, alumni, it's coming. And Dean of Students Michael Martis is with us right now. Last question. Tell us about your new boss, Neely Bendapudi.
Oh, she's
yeah, I know. I have the same reaction when people ask me.
She's great. And my focus as an alum and as the Dean of Students is all about the students. And she has been consistent wherever she goes. And I've seen her in board meetings. I've seen her in cabinet meetings, leadership meetings, with students. She consistently says our number one priority and focus is going to be about the students. And that is and has been what the university is about. But, having her say that everywhere and consistently is really refreshing. And for our focus, as long as we're really doing a great job with, providing those educational opportunities for our students, we're going to be doing the right thing for the university, for our students, and for the city of Louisville, the Commonwealth, because we're going to have more students graduate. We're going to have more students who are going to want to be here. So
I think the biggest worry for me, you, and others at the university is that she's going to wear herself out because she's meeting with community groups, donors, alumni, students every day. I mean, she has been a busy bee since she's gotten here 3 months ago.
Well, and I've realized that, part of that is just her personality. She is genuinely just a very extroverted and wants to be able to know people and really cares deeply about people. She shared her experience of how she, came to this country and how she is invested in higher education and the value that it's had for her and her family. And I think she genuinely wants to make sure that everybody has that equal kind of experience and opportunity.
She's been a lot of fun to work with so far. All right. Neely Bendapudi, the new president of the University of Louisville. Michael Martis, always great talking to you. We'll see you around campus.
Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
If you think about walking across the street in Louisville, where's the place you're most likely to get hit by a car? And are mopeds really safer than motorcycles? Doctors Matt Bozeman and Brian Harbrecht are here, and they're both surgeons as well as faculty members in the UofL School of Medicine. Gentlemen, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Didn't get hit by a car on the way here? That's good.
No, we're safe.
That's good to hear. All right, one of the studies that you all worked on, and Matt worked on in particular, talked about where are the most likely intersections to get hit in Louisville, right? And that
yes.
The essence of the study? Tell us about it.
Well, the question came up because you often see people struck by cars, and you ask them where it is, family, where do these guys live? And the answers seem to be kind of clustered in certain areas. And just from observation of working here for a while, you kind of get a feeling of what might be going on. So basically we did a retrospective study, meaning we looked back at our data that we'd already collected for about a 5-year period and just used the zip codes from where the people lived as a surrogate for where they live. And then we matched that with the average financial information for that area and what part of town that actually was in. And it completely did not match up with people where you have car wrecks, for example. Like people have car wrecks all over town, but there's very specific areas in town where you're going to be struck by a car, according to our data.
If you're a pedestrian trying to walk across the street.
Yes. If you're walking across the street in Dixie Highway and then downtown Louisville is where the clusters were, basically. So the southwest part of town, the western part of town, and then downtown, you're much more likely to be hit by a car. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. That's the downside to a retrospective study is it basically only tells you what happened. It doesn't really tell you why it happened. And so there's a lot of things that go into that. Availability of cars, city planning, the financial status of the person, could they not afford to get on the bus that day as they're trying to run across the street, substance abuse, all various types of things play into this. But it was very noticeable. Like we made heat maps and tried to overlap the heat map of where people get hit by cars versus where car wrecks happen, and there was no correlation whatsoever.
Wow. So when you're talking about Dixie Highway, you're talking about between the Watterson and the Snyder was the
basically straight from the start of the Dixie Highway all the way out.
Really? Through
south
Shively and
yeah.
everything?
Yeah, there's the if you look at the heat map from the study, it is bright red, basically completely overlying Dixie Highway, and that kind of anecdotally matches up with like the people that we see brought in that almost universally it's somewhere like that. I mean, you're just not going to be hit by a car according to our data. With any sort of frequency in Anchorage or Lake Forest or places like that are there's a lot of resources and more lighting and wider streets and things like that, and less pedestrians overall than what you're going to find downtown with people walking and walking to and from work and stuff like that. So there's a lot of factors that play into it. A retrospective study unfortunately doesn't tell you why it all happened, but it does say there should be some more thought given into how do we protect people better downtown in the western side of Louisville.
Okay, and that's Matt Bozeman, by the way, Dr. Matt Bozeman. We're here also with Dr. Brian Harbrecht from the University of Louisville. Now, Brian, just to bring you in the conversation, I got a few more questions about your study, but to bring you into this, you both work as surgeons at the University of Louisville Hospital, I assume, right? So you're seeing these accident victims, right?
Right. A large part of our practice is taking care of injured patients and trauma victims from all over, and so yes, we see those folks.
And so those are the folks you talk to, right, for this study, right?
Those are the the patients who stimulated the idea and the concept of trying to identify whether places were more likely to be areas where people were victimized.
We're getting hit, yeah. And did you use the geographers at all from the University of Louisville? Those guys are always looking at numbers and places.
Actually,
to
that kind
figure
of
out the map.
stimulated some discussion about working more with the School of Public Health and to see if there's more data that we can glean from this. Because part of it, the city puts out a report every year of this is how many X, Y, and Z happen. What's the average income? What's this, that, and the other? And some of our data actually matched up very well with the findings where there's fewer resources and fewer safety net type things, people do worse. So you're more likely to be hit by a car. You're more likely to have a substance abuse problem. You're more likely to be low income, all these different things. Kind of the same map you could probably generate for a lot of these different problems. And it's just one more key that maybe some more thought should be put into these types of areas, how to keep people safe, especially from an injured standpoint,
Right.
which is what
in a public
Dr.
health
Herbert's gonna do.
perspective.
Yes.
And Matt, when you're talking about Dixie Highway, it's 6 lanes across there for most of the way down. Shelbyville Road, much the same. Hurstbourne Lane, much the same. So why aren't people getting hit there? Or did you find any evidence that there were pockets perhaps on Hurstbourne Lane or Shelbyville Road or Brownsboro Road or those places?
Well, they are getting hit there. I mean, they're
just not as much.
just not as frequently. There have been
Right.
some fairly high-profile injuries within the last month or so in St. Matthews and Preston Highway and places like that where people have been very badly hurt and have actually stimulated some discussions about enforcing jaywalking rules and things like that. So it's the magnitude and the frequency, which is highlighted by Matt's study, not that you're not at risk for that in other places in the city.
And that's true. Did I just read something that the St. Matthews police are going to start cracking down on jaywalkers
Yes,
walking
that
across
actually
Shelbyville
was
Road?
in the news not too long ago. And I think if you added other forms of transportation, so like bicycle accidents and things like that, they're much more likely to happen in places like River Road and along Hurstbourne and things like that, where there's different choices and modes of transportation happen there. But I think part of it too is the traffic patterns are much heavier on Shelbyville Road. You're probably less likely to try to chance crossing Shelbyville Road than you would be Dixie Highway, where you might not see cars coming and things like that as frequently. So like I said, the retrospective nature of it limits a little bit for us to extrapolate a lot of like why it happened. But yes, there are some good resources in the main campus with statisticians and the School of Public Health that we'd love to work with to try to tell a more complete story about why these types of things happen.
Well, Dixie Highway has that old moniker for years and years and years. It was called Dixie Highway, which those folks that live down there are trying to get rid of, but it takes on a new connotation here. It used to refer to that there were these terrible accidents between what is now the Snyder Expressway and Fort Knox. But now you're talking about pedestrians getting hit a lot walking across the street.
Yes.
So, and downtown, are there any little pockets of places, like certain intersections or any place where that stood out?
We did it by zip code, so it's a little less granular than like a single city block. But yes, the area downtown around Whiskey Row, and then some places on Bardstown Road, we just had
The bars?
Yeah, the bars, Lexington Road, things like that. They're closer to downtown. People are more likely to be injured there. So we didn't have the granular data to say, Broadway and 3rd Street is the most dangerous intersection in town, but there was a clear, statistically significant difference between Broadway and 3rd Street and 264 and 64 intersections. I mean, it's just very striking, the total numbers once you put them together.
And before we leave your study and move on to the moped study, there are some discussions, it sounds like, with city government, perhaps state transportation folks about, all right, what do we do about this? We've got this data that shows here's the places people are getting hit crossing the street, crossing the road. What do we do about it? Do we need to put up more stop signs? I don't know, walking, the signs that tell you to walk or not walk, those kinds of things?
Those are all good ideas and ideas that should be discussed. And part of the mission of UofL, and especially the Department of Surgery and the UofL Hospital, is outreach. And so we've got a lot of contacts with the city government now. We have a gunshot wound registry. We work at the police department. We have different things like that we're trying to increase the amount of community presence that we have, and doing studies like this kind of help get the word out that maybe some things need to change in certain parts of town, especially.
Gotcha. All right, again, we're talking with Drs. Matt Bozeman and Brian Harbrecht, who are both surgeons as well as faculty members at the UofL School of Medicine, and they work at UofL hospital, in the emergency room oftentimes, where victims are brought in. And Brian, you've seen a lot of moped victims, I'm assuming, who have crashed and been brought into the emergency room and wind up in your hands. You did a study on mopeds and motorcycles. What'd you find?
We did. Well, it wasn't so much a dramatic frequency as it was the magnitude of injury. Mopeds seem to have a public misconception that they're a far safer mode of travel just because you can't get up to really high speeds like you can with a motorcycle. And we were seeing lots of people on mopeds who were coming in really with horrible injuries and basically all busted up. And so that prompted us to look to see and try to compare our moped accident victims with our motorcycle crash victims. There were some minor differences, but the striking thing was really that they were very similar in terms of magnitude of injury and that misconception that mopeds are a much safer mode of transportation really doesn't seem to be a factor in this environment or in the patients that we were seeing.
When you were talking about injuries on a moped rider, were you talking mainly head injuries, or did they run the gamut?
They ran the gamut. There were more head injuries in the moped riders than there were in motorcycle riders.
Really? Now that does surprise me.
Well, a lot of that probably has to do with the use or not use of helmets. Certainly it doesn't take a lot of traffic time for anybody driving around downtown or some of the areas to see a lot of moped riders don't wear helmets. A lot of motorcycle riders don't wear helmets too, but and so it's probably largely related to helmet use and not use.
So from the folks you're seeing in the emergency room, the folks you're doing surgery on that are riding either mopeds or motorcycles and they've been in a crash, what you're saying is essentially that the injuries are just as bad for the moped rider as they are for the motorcycle rider.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
And despite the greater speed of a motorcycle and the fact that most moped riders are riding their vehicles in lower speed environments, lower speed neighborhoods, the magnitude of the injuries were basically the same.
Did you get a chance to go a little bit granular, using Matt's word, and more granular on your data to figure out where these are happening? Are they happening on interstates? Are they happening on, like you said, the mopeds just riding around the city streets? Or did it make any difference?
Well, most mopeds have a top speed that don't get you greater than about 30 or 40 miles per hour. So you're not going to take that on the highway. You're going to drive more on suburban streets or downtown city streets. The motorcycles are able to get up to much higher speeds, and so that does impact the type of injuries that we see. But the injuries really didn't seem to correlate with the speed that the operator could get to. And the reason for that was something we could speculate on, but really it probably has to do with the types of crashes that are involved. If you're riding a moped or a motorcycle, it probably is less important how fast you are going, and probably more important is how fast the 2-ton truck that hits you is going. And so regardless of whether you're on a moped or a motorcycle, you're going to lose that kind of an impact and end up with serious injuries.
Talking with Dr. Brian Harbrecht and Dr. Matt Bozeman from the University of Louisville. One last question here, Brian, and it's got to be asked. Do helmets help?
Absolutely.
Do helmets prevent injuries, head injuries for motorcycle and riders and for moped riders when they wipe out?
Absolutely. They don't necessarily eliminate all injuries, but they take serious injuries and make them far less serious, and take less serious injuries and make them basically non-existent. Helmets are very important.
And of course, I suspect you two were among those of the surgeons and the physicians that wanted a helmet law in Kentucky that got, I think, repealed 10, 12 years ago, something like that.
It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
And are the injuries still piling up in the emergency rooms from folks who are going out and riding mopeds and motorcycles at the same rate, or are they getting greater since we no longer have a helmet law? Or do you know?
We've not really looked at that in Kentucky. Anytime anybody has looked at either a before and after for the application of a helmet law or the repeal of a helmet law, the significant head injuries always increase when there is no helmet law.
Doctors Matt Bozeman, Brian Harbrecht, appreciate you being on the show. Good
Sir,
research.
thank you.
Thank
Good
you for having
stuff. All right. Thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert, and go Cards.